Hi, my name is Crystal. This Saturday night, the UFC returns, and BetStamps has joined up with the Todd Atkins Show to provide a one-stop shop website for all of your gambling needs. When you visit Todd's page, signupexpert.com/TAS, you'll be connected to all of the sports books in your region, along with a review of each platform and its unique benefits. All of these sports books have valuable offers for new users. So when you register through MyLink, you'll automatically receive the top offers at each one. So if you want to take advantage of these benefits and support the Todd Atkins Show, please consider signing up for your next sports book at expertsignup.com/TAS. Again, my name is Crystal, and you can find me on TikTok at unapologeticallyme0424. Happy gambling!
Hi, I am Nick Dilly, and you are now watching the MMA Conspiracy Hour with Todd Atkins and Miguel Iturrate for conspiracies, combat sports, and so much more. You better stay tuned, or I'll come find you. Night Queen style.
All right, so it's Todd Atkins, and I'm back with Miguel Iturrate and another MMA Conspiracy Hour. And as always, we want to thank our sponsors, Live to Fight and BetStamp. And, Miguel, today we're going to discuss, this latest kind of news. I would say that, Conor McGregor did an interview where he kind of said the UFC is maybe playing some games with him, not letting him fight. It sounds like that. And people were saying he only has 2 fights left on his deal. We don't know that for sure, but that's what people are saying. And it sounds like they're icing him out in a similar fashion to maybe Nate Diaz most recently, where Nate Diaz had to kind of make some noise in order to, and maybe Conor will have to do that at some point, just become so unbearable that they have to do it. But I wanted to give you a chance to talk about this because it's kind of, well, I'll ask you the other questions later, but I want to give you some chance to kind of give your opening thoughts on this.
I saw the recent short interview that Conor did. He's got his movie coming out, and he says he's got festivities around St. Patrick's Day that he's got to do. He's looking slimmer. He's looking like he's got the alcoholic's tired look. We've gone into that length here. So yeah, when he does fight again at 36, you may have a little bit of a diminished star there. And, Dana's probably using that to, try to limit the amount of money they're going to pay him. Or, Conor may at this point, what, like I said, I've said this many times, what do you pay Conor McGregor for his next fight? Because he can't make what he made for Floyd Mayweather every time. Mm-hmm. But it becomes very hard. And anybody, you go to a gas station and work year in and year out every day as a mechanic, and you're a hired hand, and the boss is giving you 6 or 7% raises every year. At some point, it's very rare, in the structure that we're used to, that the boss comes along and says, hey, I'm going to cut your pay by 30-40%. And then, some people would have to keep their job, but they wouldn't be motivated or happy or anything like that. So now Conor already has peaked in his incomes. He's going to be taking less for fight than he has since the Mayweather fight, and we know that he's fought since then for the UFC. He didn't make the money for those fights that he did for UFC. You saw that he was definitely distracted and entangled in his whiskey business and other things, getting his money at an extreme level, to the point where now his income is not even dependent on the fight game anymore, right? So what is he asking for? And what is Dana coming back with? Because I would Dana's probably lowballing him and offering him less than would it, you got to get to a certain number to impress Conor, for Conor to say, all right, yeah, let's go. And if he's lowballing him, that's a rough move. So the negotiations right there, I can see why they're sort of at a stopping point. But I think, that Dana's track record of this type of thing. Here's the question and the answer that I think. The question is, who's the biggest star in UFC history? Because, you got Conor as the biggest, the guy whose net worth is the biggest, right? And obviously his pay-per-views are in the top shelf. And, with the Mayweather crossover, he's got crossover star power. So let's say that McGregor is the biggest star fighter in UFC history, but he's not the biggest star. The biggest star is Dana White. And Dana's been on top of that, managing that for the last 20 something years. As what you have here is you have basically a mafia boss in charge of a fight sporting company. And his behavior for 20 something years, and we have the trial coming up. It's 25 days away. We're going to start a countdown, but we've got the trial coming up, and we're hoping that some of that comes out in such a way that change is forced upon them. Because if change is not forced upon them, nothing's going to change Dana White. And that's why I think you say, you might say, well, the trial's there. Why would he try the same strong arm tactics that he tried with Ngannou or Diaz right now? It's because he doesn't know any other way. Because he's the biggest star. He's the biggest ego. So now Conor, might think he's close, or, maybe they compare bank accounts. They're in the same neighborhood. So he's got to look at Conor a little bit differently. But at the end of the day, he doesn't want Conor calling the shots. We talked about Chandler. Chandler is a good return fight for Conor, because I think that Conor has a lot of advantages over a shorter, stockier fighter who wants to slug it out. But Chandler's not probably Conor's most wanted choice. Just speculation. I've never ever heard anyone mention this. But, you have a British champion at 170 pounds. Conor's weight is probably in the 170 range optimally now. Cutting to 155 might be a tall order for him at this point. He's an older man, et cetera, et cetera. Conor wants a championship shot. Let's say he gets to 155. Maybe he's asking for Makhachev behind the scenes. Why wouldn't you? They just announced that they were going to do a London show. Why would you not think of putting Conor in with Leon Edwards and giving him another title shot? Let him skip over everybody in the 170-pound division. Hey, you've done it before. That's the point. So Conor might even, Conor might say, hey, why don't you put me in with Leon Edwards? I want a belt shot. And Dana's ego responds, no, not this time. That's not what I want. That's really what it comes down to, because this is always about what Dana wants. It has been for 20 years. And he's always behaved like that's the most important thing for him to get his way. Even when he looks bad, he's limited in the ways he can look bad, because he controls enough of the big media around the sport that, nobody really assaults him in a way, that to take him down a notch. There's nobody in the company that can pull him into a room and say, hey, look, this was a dick move. This is a dick move. Let's get Conor. Even it appears even now in Endeavor, been waiting a couple of years for Conor to be back. It's like, hey, where's that paycheck? Where is that pay-per-view that we need, that influx of money that we need? Why are we waiting? Well, you're waiting because that's apparently what Dana wants. Dana wants his way. He's the one who said this fight's going to happen at the end of the year. And, the other guy, the fighters all were like, hey, we could do it sooner kind of thing. And apparently, no, that's not in Dana's plan. And again, even the money even doesn't matter as much to an ego like Dana as Dana getting his way and not being told what to do by anybody. That's what what he thrives on. So yeah, I think Conor's in a bad situation, because, fast forward 10 years, if this lawsuit doesn't change things, Conor's gone in 10 years, but Dana will still be there. And so there's no doubt that Dana is the most important and biggest star the UFC has created, especially and he wants to stay that way. So, and exercising his ego is something that he's always done, even when he looks bad. Like for example, go back to the early days of Stars. At one point, if you look at it, Dana White actually managed Tito Ortiz. If you remember these things, nobody does anymore, but he was actually Tito's manager. And now, even now, years from Tito being anything relevant, he'll still get under Dana's skin, and Dana will still rant and rave about how dumb he is and how this and that and the other stuff, and really put him down. There's no reason to assault the guy like that, except for that nobody calls him out and says, you don't look cool doing that. And Tito sometimes makes himself look bad, so it all gets put under the table. But there are many examples of this, we talked about it off the air too. There's an example of one of the guys, Randy Couture turned into a Hollywood star, a guy making, kind of big time movies, part of a franchise, and kind of a crossover guy. And in general, he, with his wrestling background, I mean, I know he had divorces and things like that, but in general, Randy would qualify as a nice guy, a guy that you could maybe put in a star role for your company. But, Dana played it so petty with him that he wouldn't even let Randy Couture corner his own son at a fight that wasn't in the UFC. And then when they brought his son into the UFC, they got him beat up pretty quick. So, those are all exercises of Dana's ego that a real executive thinking what's best for the company, what's best for my athletes, wouldn't do things like that. And I think here you have another example of that with Conor. There's also, the other big article that came out just recently is that, fighters are starting to question the pay-per-view numbers that Dana says. That goes right in line with our podcast that we just did, where, Kevin Iole is giving numbers out also that don't seem to really, hold water or be semantically correct in that, you can narrow it down. Yeah. Dana White probably has the top 6 of the top 10 slap fighting videos on YouTube. That I don't doubt. But expand that to other sports and stuff. I mean, they're probably, YouTube can be simple at times. The crowd there can be simple at times. I would almost bet that there are videos of like some nice looking women pole vaulters jumping, where, maybe you see a little too much skin on them and stuff like that. And those videos will probably outdo the slap fighting videos. People are simple in terms of YouTube clips and things like that. So, like, even in the sports world, I doubt that he's got 6 of the top 10 videos in the slap fighting world. I doubt that he's got 6 videos that beat every UFC clip that they've ever put out either. And again, where can you go to count? Where do his numbers come from? What's the entity that shows these numbers so that we can go back and verify them, that we can all go into them and look without spending days on YouTube looking up videos and, maybe the algorithm or the searches and there's one that doesn't pop up and stuff like that. It's a hard thing for an independent person to research. But Kevin Iole came out and gave very firm numbers. And
firm, maybe. I don't know if they're firm, but firm.
Firm, not as in strong. Firm as in from the firm, from the book. The firm being the like they refer to the British royal family, or a mafia entity is in the John Grisham book. Where things are going on behind the scenes. That could be a double meaning for the word. Yeah. and pay-per-view numbers, I'll tell you. Pay-per-view numbers are also one of those things where, even a company like the UFC or a company, anybody that does a pay-per-view, and I've been part of a couple of pay-per-view shows, not hundreds of them or anything like that, but I've been part of a couple of pay-per-view shows. And I'll tell you, internally, there's always the question of, how the hell do we know what the pay-per-view company is telling us is right? So even the numbers that they give to Dana, it's like, yeah, you broke the record. Here it is. It's like, yeah, 3 million views. Why? Well, could that have been 5 million? And they're doing something now. Obviously, there's some transparency with big deals like that, and companies hire bookkeepers to really keep an eye on things. And hopefully, the TV companies are making so much money off of these things, or the cable and pay-per-view companies are making so much money off of these things. I believe they keep half the money. The split starts there, and half goes to the company, and then the rest is what's chopped up. And if you're a smaller company, you might get hit at the 60-40 rate, with 60% going to the TV company. You negotiate the 50%. That's the way it was in the old days when we were there. But there was always a question of like, man, you get a low number. And say, really, did we really do that low a number? How do you know? How can you go back and check up on that? Even the pay-per-view numbers are suspect in some way. So why would Dana not think he could be creative in that area? You can't, as a journalist, probably call up the pay-per-view company and get a definitive number that they'll back up and say, here, this is the official number. You may know an insider or hear the word or anything like that, but yeah, everything is used, especially those numbers are used, by Dana, I think, to enhance his own power and his own ego. And that's the key. Again, once again, what we have here is we have a mafia boss, a mafia mentality that's in charge of a sporting company. And when in boxing, this came out in the 40s and 50s that this was going on, it was broken, or they tried to break it. So, like I said, we're 25 days away for this trial. I just can't wait. I can't believe, we're waiting for court on this one. But yeah, that is the big deciding factor of what we'll see in MMA going forward. I don't care if the sport gets smaller for a little while because you don't have this mega machine because they were taken down. I care about the integrity of what's actually happening in the sport. And if after all Conor is done and all the money that he could generate, he's being frozen out, there really can only be one reason. And that is what Dana wants. The biggest star there is against it. Was against anyone telling him what to do or how to do it. And that's the most important thing for him. So now, even though they could complain in the last few years, we've had to lead off with O'Malley and Strickland, and Adesanya didn't break through into mega numbers and this. And, we need a big star. We need John Jones back, Jones is also maybe getting some of the same treatment. Jones sometimes also, comes into the bullseye with his negotiations because he questions. Jones isn't a dumb guy. He's a little bit of an X factor. Loose cannon sometimes, but he's not dumb. He knows the kind of money that he can generate and why is he not in the ring? Now they're bringing him in, and again, it looks like he may fight in London. That's, if you want an all-time great pay-per-view card, who's Leon Edwards' opponent been announced as?
I don't even know if they have one.
I'll double check on that. But, Leon is a guy also. First of all, here you got a champion that, to me, he's in his prime, and he's not fighting as often as you would like to see. You're not getting Leon Edwards every 4 to 6 months defending his title in the most active division with the most depth, where you could definitely roll him out and just keep challenging him. And
they were talking about putting him with Chimaev at 300, but it didn't materialize. So I don't think he has a fight.
Yeah, now in December, he fought Colby Covington, another guy that they kind of rushed in there. See, before that, it was 9 full months before we saw him. And it looks like it was 8 months or 7-something months with the Usman taking the title and then the Usman rematch. And before that, he sat out more than a year waiting for his title shot, especially after he beat Nick Diaz. So Leon Edwards is a guy who's 32 right now. So in the last 3 years, you've taken his exact prime. 29 to 32 would be what most people tell you is the prime of a fighter's career. You take his exact prime and you've underused him. Why? Because he's not a major crossover guy, a pay-per-view star. So you put him in second fiddle, or he's the champion. Like I said, I wouldn't be fond of giving Conor McGregor a title fight, but I'm just speculating that might be something that would entice Conor back into the ring quicker, or maybe make him negotiate for a little less. Has he held a 170-pound title? Would that make him a 3-division world champion in the UFC? Would that be something that Conor you could talk to about legacy and maybe take less money for legacy for what you're going to be able to tell you about? Put him in with Edwards in London for this next card that they're dreaming up. They can make this fight happen. There are ways to motivate your guys, and there are ways that you can do this. That Chimaev hasn't done enough at once. They moved him to 185, so he's not a great matchup for Edwards anymore either. But again, you've got a real deep division there with a lot of talent. But Conor would stand up. He's cut the line before. His Jose Aldo fight should have belonged to Eddie. What's the kid from New Jersey's name? I just blanked out.
Eddie Alvarez.
No. He's from Philly. The other kid. Maybe his name isn't Eddie. He was longtime 155-pound champion, Frankie Edgar.
Oh, Frankie Edgar. Okay.
It's Frankie Eddie. Frankie Edgar. That's why I got mixed up. And I apologize, but that title fight belonged to Frankie Edgar. Frankie Edgar was made to wait for his title shot because of Conor McGregor. And, and at that point, after a while, it didn't even materialize for him. And then, he was gone from the title picture because, it's tough to stay on top in this sport. When you let a couple of years go by, you're really actually having an incredible drastic effect on the lifespan of these fighters. And Dana's manipulated that from the very beginning. In the lawsuit, it's come out, where he would send Joe Silva out. I recently interviewed Tim Sylvia, and Tim said that Joe Silva told him, hey, we don't know when we're going to use you. You're talking about a guy who held their belt twice. It's like, when you're going to use him? You're going to use him as soon as he's available. Get him a match. But that's not the way the company works. And again, mafia boss stuff. Like, picture Dave Silver, the NBA commissioner, walking into the locker room during the playoffs and giving players a check under the table. It doesn't happen. He can't appear to have any influence that way. We know what he likes, and the NBA gets accused of semantics with the playoffs and extending series to 7 years. Everybody's got conspiracy theories, but Dana is definitely the most blatant actor here. And again, it goes back to what I said. Dana, in his own mind, is the biggest star, is the most important thing that ever happened in MMA. And it is his way or the highway. And he's always behaved that way. And he's always actually been able, to execute. And I mean that, in making it happen, but also execute to the point where he killed a lot of people in the business by freezing them out and by not accepting anything but his way. So now Conor, their way and Conor's way matched up, even with the Mayweather thing. And Dana gets credit for allowing that. Say, what dummy wouldn't do a match like that if $100 million was going to fall into his company's pocket? Because they never created anything in the UFC that brought in that kind of money. So now it's actually good experience. They went in there, and now, they've toyed with maybe doing it again. With Ngannou, they knew they weren't going to reach those numbers, so they don't let it happen again. But it's in the back of their, in their back pocket.
Yeah.
So it again, that's what you see here being exercised is Dana not worrying about the lawsuit, doesn't believe it can have any effect on them, and Dana acting business as usual. Dana is the biggest star in NBA history.
Or UFC history.
NBA, UFC history. I'm
NBA
sorry,
history.
too many headshots here. But in fight history, he's firmly feels that, and nothing will take that away from him. His bank account tells him it's okay. But the things he's gotten away with, you know, I remember when I was living in New York, and I lived a few neighborhoods down from a neighborhood called Howard Beach. Howard Beach is where John Gotti lived. And there was, I think it was the San Gennaro Festival, where it's an Italian festival that, New York and Little Italy area shut down and had street fairs and things like that back in the day. I'm sure there's still some version of it. But in Howard Beach, John Gotti would shut down several blocks and give food for the whole neighborhood, and everybody liked that. Meanwhile, John Gotti's salary and the money he was making didn't add up to him being able to do that. But he took care of his people. He acted blatantly. And eventually went down. So that's the hope of the trial, is that Dana's blatant activities that we've been watching, making note of for 20 years, and being like, well, when is something going to be happening? There is no entity. There's nobody in this company who can tell him, hey, you're wrong. And any fighter who says, hey, this is wrong, you're treating me wrong, Dana seems to double down on the treatment. It's not like he says, oh, you're right. Let's take care of this guy. I've been hard on him. Conor is a perfect example of a guy that if Conor's feeling frozen out now, who better to kowtow to than the guy who's made you the most money that you've ever had? So, yeah, this comes down to Dana and Dana's ego, something that we've addressed on multiple podcasts with multiple angles, because what I'm saying, that he is the biggest star and the biggest power in MMA and UFC ever, especially in his own mind. In his own mind, he is the biggest factor, not any of the fighters. And in his own mind, that's even that gap is even greater. So that is the issue, and it's a recurring issue, but it's coming up again very strongly here with these two videos. Conor wants to fight. I think, behind the scenes, Chandler, like I said, isn't exactly the guy that Conor wants. He'll do it because, at the end of the day, it maybe $30 million. You don't just leave that. And Conor's got to look at it and go, yeah, it's not going to be that hard. And no disrespect to Chandler, but like I said, Chandler looks a lot like Eddie Alvarez, even in the physics of it. And I had high hopes for Eddie to be the guy that, guy with a little street smarts, a little street fighting in him too. I thought Eddie might be the right guy to shut down the Conor train. It didn't go that way at all. Conor's precision, wasn't just for the Aldo fight. He showed it in a longer, more extended fight. He knocked Eddie's ass down several times. And, Eddie might be a better boxer than Chandler. If Chandler thinks he's going to come in all wild and knock Conor out, the chances of that happening are not great. I think you're slanting towards Conor on that one. But like I said, could you be dreaming up Chimaev against Makhachev? Conor against Makhachev, rather. Conor down at 155 pounds again. I don't think he wants to cut all that weight. It wouldn't be easy. But he'll fight Makhachev is undefeated. Should he beat Makhachev, there's also opens up the chance of Khabib. And like I said, you could use the belt as a tool to lure Conor. And I think the more intriguing fight there is Leon Edwards, because that would make Conor a 3-division champion in England. There's all kinds of reasons why would you not look at that? Why would you just rule that out? if money's the only thing you want to make, that would be probably, even with Leon being a firm B asset there in that fight, like he's not a huge draw on his own, but put Conor opposite him and tell Leon, you can end this Conor train. And, you're going to do it in front of, the British public, which to me, the British public is a great fight public, and now you got Ireland versus England. That would be a huge fight. I've never even heard anybody mention it. So, yeah, and Dana didn't think of it. So Dana, he wants Chandler. So, yeah, that's what we're looking at here. It's Dana and Dana's ego. What do you got for me? You said you had questions. I've been talking too long.
No, you kind of answered one of them, which was it to me, at least on the surface, it seemed a little, I would say, what's the word I want to use? I don't know, but it's a little bit to be out in the open and kind of doing some of the same things, or even giving the impression that you're doing some of the same things. I'll defend him a little bit. Maybe Conor's asking for some things they don't want to, because he was saying International Fight Week, and then he wanted to fight in the Sphere, which is Mexican Independence Day. They're not going to have him fight Diaz in the main event of that event. Diaz is an American, and Conor's Irish. They're not going to have them fight.
Diaz doesn't even have a contract anymore.
Right, but I'm saying he may be his last name may be Diaz. He may have Mexican descent, but he's an American. He probably can't even speak Spanish.
Yeah.
They're not going to have him and Conor headline the Mexican Independence Day. So that's a ridiculous want. That's a ridiculous request.
If Dana wanted it, they could do it.
And yeah, they could, no doubt.
If Dana put their marketing machine with all its balls to hype that fight, it would be a big fight.
But I think the Mexican fans wouldn't like it because they'd be like, what is this?
Yeah, but I don't necessarily think that, I agree, Cinco de Mayo, the UFC kind of took that over from Canelo.
Right.
And I think that they could, they don't have a Mexican star that can hold that.
Right.
A candle to Canelo.
Right.
So they would have to come up with something else big, and Conor's big.
Yeah.
To me, what I don't understand is okay, if USADA was the one that was guilty last year, then what's the problem this year as to why we're not seeing Conor in the ring now? The problem is Dana. The problem is that Dana gets what Dana wants, always. To him, that's the most important thing. Behind the scenes, he doesn't tell you, but behind the scenes, if Dana doesn't get what he wants, Dana will do everything in his power to exert himself to make what he wants happen. And with that, it's undeniable that the guy's a type A type of personality, that he's been able to do that at a high level and powerfully in the sport for 20-something years. Get his way. And every time you get your way, you become more firmly ensconced in your theory that you're always right. You're never wrong. And that's my best assessment of Dana at this point.
I'm going to give you some.
It even shows up really fast. I'm sorry to cut you off. I'd rather hear you talk, but it even comes up in something as simple as his capability of, so the WWE and the UFC got together, and there's a merger there, and some lawyer who we've never heard of before, never heard of since, who probably has $1 million salary and is a guy who's pretty well off, makes a dumb statement in the media about every UFC fan being a WWE fan and vice versa. Dana could have just kept his mouth shut, but his ego didn't let him. So he has to come out and crap all over this guy. Show, hey, look, I'm still here, and I call the shots. I'll tell you the way it is. And that's not the way it is over there. That's something that's a dream. This is the way it is. Like I said, I wouldn't have, I dream up. If I were that lawyer, I would have said, Dana, what about this power slap shit? And I can't believe we're bringing up power slap, but it's like, what about this power slap shit? You don't know everything. But there's, again, not even that guy that guy had to shut up and take Dana's beating in the media. No response. No nothing. What if that man has an ego too? Who stopped him from talking to the media again? Being like, you know what? Dana White's a friggin' jerk. And he's not so good because they don't make the money that we do. They don't make the money that boxing does. He's pocketing all the money. Dana has a lot of places that you could poke him, and nobody seems to. That's a recent example. Go ahead, Todd. Sorry.
I'm gonna let you finish with something I think you'll like and that maybe you didn't catch up on. But Francis Ngannou says he wants to box again, that he's not really keen on going back to MMA. At least at this time. Is he ever going to fight in PFL? Did they sign him just for the appearance of signing him?
Yeah, if they sign him for the appearance of signing him, not getting him into the ring is a black eye, whether you like it or not. It's a symbol and a sign that the company is small. So now is the time. They've been generous, but now is the time that if they have a contract that they can enforce, they must enforce it. Either he never fights again or he fights Frere. That's it. Those are your choices, Ngannou. Because if not, we'll show it. And if the contract left a loophole for Ngannou to do what he wants, then they're a weak company.
Mm-hmm.
And that says it all. Now, yeah. Again, Joshua is a guy that is one of those money generators. The British public loved him. The guy is still 34 or something like that. I think I had his age off by a couple of years in a recent video, but he's still under 35. We've been listening to his name for the last 10 years. He's the guy who's making some of the biggest box office fights in boxing for the last 10 years. In fact, Tyson Fury had to reach that level after him. And even though Joshua has taken some losses, he's still about as marketable and about as presentable a box office name that you have. So I'm not surprised that Ngannou looked at, okay, that's my paycheck. And then what are you going to get for Frere? Because Frere to me sounds like, and this is the problem that the PFL has. Does the PFL have the ability to say, or the cash, the money on hand to say, we're going to bonus you 10, 20 million? The fight did so well, you're going to get a big bonus? Or are they going to just sit and be like, hey, you get 10 million. That's what the contract says. Because then they're going to fall short. And that ties back to something we said at the very beginning of this podcast is, how's Ngannou going to deal with taking a pay cut for his next MMA fight from what he's been making the last two fights? And then you tie into that, looking at Frere. Frere now becomes a monster, a scary guy. A guy who right now, Frere is probably, in a harness pulling airplanes, getting himself prepared, getting his strength, his everything prepared for this fight because it's everything. He has never, you could add up every single box office that he's done on all his fights. I think he's up to like 13 or 14 career fights. It's not even close to what this opportunity is to fight Ngannou. Ngannou is a much bigger name than he could ever have expected to face when he signed with the PFL. Now, all of a sudden, he's right there. Even when they signed Ngannou, Frere wasn't like, I'm going to fight him. Frere had to prove himself, get out there and just, weed his way through the PFL roster until he is the only guy that makes sense for them to put him in against. I'm not surprised Ngannou said, man, you haven't done enough to build a star to face me. That's part of the problem. You're facing a guy who all of the upside for this fight belongs to Frere. If he wins, if he doesn't win but looks good, even then, you could add up everybody who's ever seen Frere fight. And more people are going to be watching him against Ngannou than against anybody else. There's no downside for Frere on this fight unless he comes out and gets cremated in about 8 seconds. And, he's 6'8". He brings some X factors that way. I think he'll take his chances. I ain't going to get knocked down in 8 seconds. And if I get knocked down in the first 8 seconds, man, Unless I'm dead, I'm getting up and I'm fighting. It's a huge opportunity for him. And for Ngannou, I'm not surprised he's looking at it and going, yeah, there's a lot of negatives on this one for me. I don't like it. And when we talked about the fight, we talked about it from the PFL's perspective. It really is the only thing they can do. But I'm not surprised that Ngannou doesn't like him. Boxing, hey, like I said, I think a lot of the top 10 guys would do. I think it was Teddy Atlas who actually said a lot of the same things I said. Boxing finally showed up. You have an amateur at the top ranks. That should be apparent at some point. Tyson Fury didn't make that apparent. That's on Tyson. Joshua made it apparent. All Joshua did was come out a little bit aggressive, and Ngannou wasn't, and that broke Ngannou's game plan. Ngannou wanted to sit back and box like he did with Tyson Fury and see if he can get his big punch in. And Joshua wasn't going to allow that one bit. Boxing has layers of sophistication. A lot of these guys should be able to do that to him. So yeah, if he wants to box again and maybe he can break the contract, he goes in and boxes again. What do you think? Let's say Usyk beats Fury, and Usyk wants to cash in on a huge payday. You think Usyk is going to fool around with Ngannou the way Fury did, or you think Usyk, everything we know about his mindset and the seriousness of an athlete that he is, Usyk's going to come in and try to take care of business in the most efficient way possible? Usyk would be a terrible opponent for Ngannou unless he wants to go 1-2 and just cash paydays.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, the reason Ngannou doesn't want to go back to PFL is simple. It's hard to take a pay cut to do what you've already been doing for a certain level of money. No matter what, in any walk of life, you work at a record store and you get $1 more a month or a year, an hour per year. And then the boss comes in and goes, I got to cut you 20%, 30%, 50%. You're going to make half the money you made last year. Nobody would put up with that. People would be looking for another job. And that's what Ngannou is doing. He's looking for another job. He's looking to stay in boxing.
Yeah, I think that's kind of an interesting thing to kind of leave on. And, as always, we like to let you kind of talk about what you're doing with the dog rescue and everything in Costa Rica.
Well, it's business as usual here. I went into town today. We got a little bit of money. So I spent like about $80 on getting like 40 kilos of bones and stuff to feed the dogs at the rescue. And that was my day today. So they're roasting bones over at the, bones with meat on them, not just bones, but, they come out to about $2 a kilo on the pay scale. I'm not sure humans would be enamored with consuming them, but the dogs sure love them. It's a treat for them. And hey, shelter dogs need to be adopted. But dogs in a shelter, they're still sort of locked up. They're still sort of, in a regimen with a couple of people watching over a massive amounts of dogs. And, we have 60 dogs here at the shelter in 3 packs, basically. There's some packs that you can't leave with the other. There's one dog that's isolated because it's, not good with the other dogs and stuff. So it becomes a regimen. It's like, and when they have their time, their brief amount of time every day where they get walked, they get fed and stuff like that. That's a joy to them. So today they got a little bit of extra treats, and I got a kick out of it because I got to bring some. I'm actually watching my neighbor's dogs too, so I've got like a pack of dogs that's under my watch here at the house as well, mine and the neighbors and stuff like that. And I swiped some bones for them, and just watching them be happy and elated and chasing and hugging me and jumping up on me and stuff. Hey, it was a good, pleasant interaction, and you ruined it by making me talk about Dana White.
Well, as always, for the people that are watching this, we appreciate your support, and support Miguel's project, which we have in the show notes as always, the Groupon, or not the GoFundMe, not the Groupon, GoFundMe that's in the show notes.
Yeah,
And
but I got my pay-per-view my PayPal sparked up. Miguel 1970 at gmail.com. If anybody, even just $2 or dollar donations, they add up, and they'll sit in there, and like I said, I'll present Todd receipts and be transparent. I don't expect it, because every dog shelter out there hits people up for money and stuff like that, and there's only so much that people can do, but it does make a big difference. Today, spending a little bit extra money on dog bones and things like that, um, has its rewards, and it doesn't happen all the time, or it's not, part of the normal routine. It was something kind of special that we were able to do. So, yeah, you can make a special day for a dog. If you can't adopt, you can't take a dog out of a shelter, or actually, it's a long commitment and stuff. Backing up the people that are making that commitment on a daily basis is another way that you can help. Everybody needs the help. You can see dog shelters. Imagine situation for dog shelters in Ukraine now, not to mention Israel or Gaza, or are there even dog shelters in war zones right now? If the people are suffering, which it's unimaginable being in a war zone, as an American, nobody even mentions the animals, but what kind of suffering is going on there? So you can find shelters right in your hometown in the United States where you can go and make a difference as well. So I encourage it. I think it's good for the soul. It's good for mine. I feel like I'm doing something positive and good. So I encourage that type of behavior with our fans as well. It's a feel good moment.
go ahead and spell out the PayPal so people know.
It's the first three letters of my name, MIG. The first two letters of my last name, IT, MIGIT. 1970, the year I was born, at gmail.com. So it's Miguel 1970 at gmail.com.
And we'll put that in the notes as well. And
yeah, it might make it easier. PayPal is now one of those things that it's come a long way since we saw it start, and it is very easy and very functional for people to use, and it's also a good way to transact with small amounts where you're not going to go to a bank and wire me $1. But you could shoot over a PayPal dollar, and it'll add up with some of the others, and hopefully we can give the dogs another treat next month. It'd be great.
All right. Well, Miguel, as always, appreciate insight on these topics, and people, please subscribe, and put comments in the, we'll respond to them. And as always, we appreciate the support, and until next time.
Yeah. And I want to shout out Celso. I know that he's a guy that you've had a relationship with, and know him for a bit, but he's definitely been very supportive of the site, of our tapings, and he's also in his commentaries and stuff shown proof that he watches the videos till the very end. So definitely appreciate him. He's got great insight on the fight game as well. He's curious and asks great questions. So more power to him, and more power to all the other fans. Go ahead and make yourself known in the comments.
Yeah. Celso's daughter is the top wrestler here in Oklahoma in her weight class. Wins almost every time, I would say. So she's doing really well. Brissa Bernal's her name. So, yeah.
Yep. And I, on my site, the MMA Collector 74 on YouTube, my channel, I just interviewed Joe Jordan, whose son is the top high school wrestler on the wrestling side. And I believe he's going to be a Cowboy next year, Oklahoma State. Recruited him and has him there. And he was one of the top 3 recruits in the country in wrestling. So a shout out to all our Oklahoma friends out there, and you can maybe support my channel and my page as well. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. As always, we appreciate it. Until next time, take care.
Live to Fight is the type of company that Dana killed. It's a homegrown, it's a guy that just does good work and, puts it out there, and if you can support him, you really should, because he's precisely a guy who can't, his banners may not be able to hang on to UFC because he hasn't been able to pay them $100,000 to get his stuff out there. That's the corporate stuff that we're talking about now with the UFC, that, they've made everything at that level where it's all about money for them. And Live to Fight is a dude that does good work, makes you a great banner, and, doesn't have $100,000 to get on the UFC and stuff, and deserves support. So any fighter out there, anybody out there, owner of a gym or anything like that listens to us, God bless you and thank you very much for your support. And extend that to Live to Fight, because he's one of us. Those guys are one of us.